invited the Venerable Master to stay there. And he said, cool, you know, can my mom stay too? Well, no, you'd have to stay alone. And think of this mother, she's lost her husband, and now she decides, after great contemplation and probably tears and angst, to let go of her son because she knew that that would be the best thing for him. So he went from this war-torn country, finally coming to Taiwan. And when he talks about his time in Taiwan, he came in poor, and he didn't speak the language. He looked different. He sounded different. And as our country has been inhospitable to immigrants, so was Taiwan at that time. So he felt firsthand what it's like to be the other. And instead of losing faith, he said, we just need to go back to what the Buddha taught us. And then he saw also where Buddhism had gone in Taiwan, and he wanted to bring it back to the true teachings of the Buddha. I call it a little less feng shui and a little more Noble Eightfold Path. So what then he wanted to do to meet the needs of people, he said, I want to bring Buddhism into the family and society. I want to humanize, modernize, and incorporate Buddhism into people's lives. And I want us to focus on the word modernize here. He has also said that he's very, very traditional, and he has to push himself at times to change with the times. And I think when he says that to us, what he's also telling us is that that's what we have to do. We have to meet the moment that we are in. So I believe that he's heartfelt focus on compassion towards others stems from all that he had seen and all that he understood through his studying of the Buddha's early teachings. Some people, when they go through strife, walk away from their faith or their belief, and he walked into it to find solace and meaning for his life and for the life of others. So one time I was talking to Venerable Guang, and I said, you know, to me, the Venerable Master is a rock star, you know, a Buddhist rock star. And she said, dum, 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 you know, like he's playing the guitar. But that's the way I feel he just brought so much to people. So now let's look at the characteristics of humanistic Buddhism. He talks about 6 of them. And the words at times can seem kind of disparate or disconnected until you understand what he's saying. He speaks of humanity, we're human, emphasis on daily life, not what was, not where we've been, not where we're going, but what we are doing now, altruism, joyfulness, and we'll talk some about the difficulty of joyfulness in the time of COVID, timeliness, and universality. For humanity, you know, of course we're human, but that's not just what it means. It means that we have to be loving and accepting and kind and of good moral character, remembering that we share that humanity. Where Black people are saying, I'm thinking of the father, Jacob Blake's father yesterday, he said, we are human beings. Treat us as human beings. And this is what the Venerable Master is saying. All these people here, all these different looking people are all human beings. We're all the very same. It's just the clothing and the complexion that's different. Then the Venerable Master tells us that we have to emphasize daily life. Studying the ancient prophets is good. The parables are good, but only as good as we can take that information and make it real in today's life. Or it's just a story. You could be reading Cinderella, but if you want to really understand the teachings through the parables and stories, you have to bring it forward. Humanistic Buddhism is not a course in philosophy or ancient history. It's what we do today. It's how we play it forward, how we treat our friends and our adversaries. Venerable Pema Chodron, and I will paraphrase her. She says, you know, that part of loving kindness is learning how to love those people who even drive you nuts. You know, that we learn to reach out to others. The Venerable Master also talks about altruism and joyfulness. In altruism, the Buddha came to the world to teach and be an example and nurture beings, all beings. And the whole purpose was to bring comfort and joy and peace to people to relieve their suffering. He also taught of our interdependence, that none of us stand apart from one another. Our oneness teaches us that we never reach real happiness until no one suffers. As long as some people get and some people don't, or we set up a dual way of looking at the world, then not only is our adversary not happy, but truly we won't be either. The altruism is sort of the deep to the bone caring for one another and everything upon which we rely. The animals, the earth, the sky, it's all part of us. And that we have to have deep care for others, deep care to the bone without prejudice or judgment. That's not to be confused with discernment, where we see the wrongness in the world, but we don't judge the person as wrong. We judge them as needing to learn. And then we come to joyfulness. We're filled with joy when we're free from pain. And we can, the word suffering sometimes makes more sense for Westerners when we call it dissatisfaction or discontent. I call it an emotional ouch. We struggle so with our inner lives that we create a heap of trouble for ourselves, a heap of pain. And if we can get beyond that discontent and that state of mind, then we experience joyfulness. And joyfulness just fills our heart and allows us to breathe. Just breathe. He then mentions timeliness. And when I first saw that word, the first time I did a little talk on this, I thought, man, what does timeliness mean? And then finally I got it. It's sort of the time traveler part of Buddhism. That although the Buddha taught 2,600 years ago about now, we can fast forward all of the teachings and see that they make sense today too. Maybe the words are a little different. Maybe the analogies that he used comes from India of 2,600 years ago, but it's up to us then to interpret that into our daily lives. Because there's nothing old-fashioned about loving kindness. There's nothing old-fashioned about compassion. The Buddha taught 26 years ago about the natural phenomenon also, and how this world works. And the scientists of the 21st century are catching up with him. And a lot of times when I talk to scientists, they share things with me that, you know, sort of blow my mind. And they say, you know, it really connects with what you believe in Buddhism. So then we come to the last characteristic of humanistic Buddhism, and that's universality. What the Venerable Master means here is that no person, no being, no nothing is left behind. That we incorporate everything and we see everything as precious. Everything, every person. And Buddhism reminds us that we reach out in our practice in all directions, all corners of the world, and the sky and the earth. So that's what, in a nutshell, or maybe two nutshells, the Venerable Master was talking about in these 6 characteristics. For lack of a better term, I'd like to call this now applied Buddhism. Here's where I see this can have an impact, if we think about it, have an impact in our daily life. And let's first look at humanity. When we see violent protesters, as well as peaceful demonstrators, do we see their inner thought? Or only their outer action? Do we take time to understand their pain or their fear that can erupt into destruction? Or do we only paint them with a negative brush? Do we understand that the march to justice takes many different steps? It's messy. And do we see that order is the result of justice? And if we see that order is result of justice, then we understand that our humanity is very precious. It's hard at times for people who have limited experiences, or if we go back to those causes and conditions of how people are raised and what their experiences are, we often find that people cannot find the goodness in people who don't look like us, sound like us, are very unlike us. But in this time, especially as we are the more privileged class, by education, by money in our pocket perhaps, by the color of our skin, we can be that pebble. We can be that pebble in the human ocean that begins to create ripples of goodness out, 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 out. We have that choice. And I think that the Venerable Master would posit we have that responsibility. That it's like the butterfly effect they talk about. The butterfly flapping a wing has effect far beyond even where that little butterfly lives or the year in which it lives. So that if we understand that small changes can affect the trajectory of people's lives, societies, and nations for good or ill, then we are more careful about what we do. And that is how I perceive understanding the humanity of humanistic Buddhism. I ran across a story in Lion's Roar from, I think it was a year or so ago, that I want to share with you. There was this kid, he was a neo-Nazi. It's in a story called Journey from Hate to Love. In short, this neo-Nazi street fighter had a swastika on his middle finger, so that when he gave the finger, people would be scared, run away, repulsed. But he was in a line at a McDonald's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when he got up to the front of the line, an older black woman was the cashier. And she looked at him, directly at him, and said, "I know you're a better person than that. That's not who you are. That's not who you are." He said he ran out of that store, didn't go back. It just blew him away, because he was used to intimidating people. And here this woman's saying, there's something good inside you. Scared the pants off him in some ways. So sometimes our smallest way of intervening with someone can change a person's life. He said that incident, plus he had a Jewish boss, a lesbian supervisor, Black and Latino co-workers, and he started beginning to think differently about all of them because of this one lady. He had a daughter who was an early teen who had been reading some books on Buddhism. And she ended up getting him into a Shambhala Buddhist center. And that was 11 years ago. And now he is working, you see the lower picture of him. Now he is working, trying to help other young people move away from violent behaviors. The fellow up above the picture of the Buddha, the front of the magazine, that is a fellow that was, I think, one of his children or family members was a victim of this guy. So to me, the clarity of this message is the value of everybody's humanity, including this punk, that the kindness of a few people changed his life, that then changed many other lives, and now he's a giving member of society. And that caused me to think. I wonder how many times we're repulsed or we're afraid when we see somebody who looks different than we, who acts different than we. What would it take for us to reach out to love instead of walking away? And what are we afraid of? Why would we be afraid of this young man who inside is just scared himself? Is there a way that we can be the McDonald's lady, reaching out in another way to change a life? And even if it doesn't change that life, it will change ours, because now we experience loving kindness. There's another thing that the Venerable Master talks about, emphasis on daily life. And that made me think of, oops, I don't want to go to that yet. That I don't know if you've heard the word chister. Those are Christians who go to church at Christmas and Easter. And then we have what in the literature are called nightstand Buddhists, people who read a lot of books on Buddhism and can maybe spout quite a bit, but it's an intellectual exercise. And I asked a friend of mine, okay, there are the chisters, there are the nightstand Buddhists. She's Jewish. I said, what do Jews call people who show up just for the high holidays? And she said, majority. and Myers always had a way with words, and I thought that was pretty funny. What what the Venerable Master is again saying, that humanistic Buddhism is really putting our boots on and getting out there. And Buddhism, like all traditions, has a rich history and philosophy, but to live the belief, to live the philosophy, to live the religion, to live however you want to characterize your belief system, we have to do more. We might be able to quote the Torah. We might know a lot of Bible verses. We might be able to chant a sutra. That's a piece of it. That should only give us the knowledge and the spirit in order to go out and do. It's the study, and then it's the practice.
Excuse me, sorry to interrupt. You have 5 minutes left.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So what I think that we should do in this is understand that Buddhism is a living religion, a living way of life. And what I would like to do for the end is share with you about altruism. Altruism means that no one suffers. And the Buddha gives an excellent example. It's a sutra called the Monk with Dysentery Sutra. And I want to read it to you, and it's short. You know, the part that I'm going to read to you is short. And I want you to think about what the Buddha is saying about the monk, about the other monks, about ourselves. He says, now at this time, oh, and this, by the way, is my favorite depiction of the Buddha that's in the original intent, because it shows him caring for the monk with dysentery. And this quote is from, or this translation is from a monk who's in San Diego County. It says, now at this time a certain monk was sick with dysentery. He lay fouled in his own urine and excrement. Then the Blessed One, on an inspection tour of the lodgings with Venerable Ananda, his attendant, went to that monk's dwelling, and on arrival saw the monk lying lying fouled in his own urine and excrement. On seeing him, he went to the monk and said, "What is your sickness?" He says, "I have dysentery, O Blessed One." "But do you have an attendant?" "Oh no, Blessed One." "Then why don't the monks attend to you?" He said, "I don't do anything for the monks, which is why they don't attend to me." Then the Blessed One addressed Venerable Ananda. "Go fetch some water, Ananda. We will wash this monk." "As you say, Lord," said Ananda. Ananda replied, and he fetched some water. The Blessed One sprinkled water on the monk, and Venerable Ananda washed him off. Then, with the Blessed One taking the monk by the head and Venerable Ananda taking him by the feet, they lifted him up and placed him on the bed. Then the Blessed One, from this cause, because of this event, had the monks assembled and asked them, "Is there a sick monk that is dwelling over there?" And they said, "Oh, Blessed One, yes, there is. And what is his sickness?" "It is dysentery." "Why doesn't he have an attendant?" "The monks don't attend to him." "He doesn't do anything for the monks, Lord, which is why they don't attend to him." And then the Venerable, the Buddha says, "Monks, you have no mother, you have no father who might tend to you. If you don't tend to one another, then who will tend to you? Whoever would tend to me should tend to the sick. You don't tend to someone because you consider them worthy. You tend to them because you consider them of need. And I'd like to take just to share one more story, if I may. Do I have a couple minutes?
You have one actually at 8:25.
Oh, okay.
To make it
I don't have the time thing on here, so
okay.
That one of the things, and I won't go through everything that I have here, but one of the things that I think we should think about is how children are being treated in our society. On the one side here, you see children at the border under mylar blankets. Some of them were supposed to go to Fort Sill in Oklahoma and be sequestered, incarcerated, housed, whatever there. And it was a bunch of Japanese Americans and Japanese American monastics who went to Fort Sill and demonstrated and prayed. And because of what they did, because they remembered their experience as Japanese children during World War II, they stopped the incarceration of those children at Fort Sill. They didn't see that that was their past. They saw that these children are their present. And I think that's when we think about our universality and our responsibility for one another, it's that we begin to see our sameness, not our difference. And if we see our sameness, we think about, we live under those mylar blankets with those children. We think about those children who saw their daddy shot in Kenosha last week. And we also think about the curative power of prayer and caring that these Japanese Americans showed the community a year or so ago. There's much more to share, but we don't have time. What I would like to, let's see. Oh, yes, there's, we'll go over to another good saying of the Venerable Master. He says, faith in humanistic Buddhism shall lead to the purification of body and mind. That if we have the faith and if we practice that faith, we become pure. With an open mind, you shall transcend all differences between self and others. You will free yourself from attachment and delusion and suffering. Additionally, you shall feel the joy of Chan and Dharma. These are the benefits that can be attained through the practice of humanistic Buddhism. I think the greatest recipient of practicing humanistic Buddhism is that altruistic circle that comes back around and gives us a fulfilled life, gives us a joyful life, because we have brought joy to others. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. To end, a reminder, next month, Venerable Juji is going to talk about what to do at home. And I was thinking this evening, I wanted to share about our responsibilities in the community, and the way we are able to do that is to have a spiritual home in our temple, in our hearts, and within our four walls, where many of us are staying most of the week and most of the days. Thank you all.
Thank you, Aina. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk. Would anybody like to ask a question? I posted on the chat. If anybody would like to ask, to just type the word chat so that I can call your name in order, but there's no one yet. I'm not able to see everybody in the same page, but if you can speak up and unmute yourself if you have a question.
Or if you just want to say something, you know, I know most of these people. We don't have to be that formal.
Thank you for your lecture. Beautiful. And thank you for your lecture. It's beautiful. Sorry, I'm in the dark a little. And I love the story about the Japanese monk, and that warms my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Go online. You can actually even see. There was an article in Lion's Roar. You can also see some film of it if you just Google it or YouTube it or however we do these things these days. And it's really neat.
I do have a question though. Thank you. I will look into Lion's Roar. I do have a question though, like regarding the discussion on the neo-Nazi child, the kid where the black lady had the ability to, you know, transform him.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with this sometimes. It's like there are times you can say something. There's times it's not wise to say something, to intervene. Like, and I mean, the wisdom in that, like, what do we look like? I want to make a difference when I can, but I want to also not put my views on somebody or create a more defensive situation when it may not be helpful.
Yeah, right.
It's like
in many ways what she did there is she said something that isn't debatable. She didn't say you're wrong. She didn't say, do you know what the Nazis did? You know, none of that. She just said, you're better than that. You're better than hate. Because he knew that what he was doing was for hate. Sometimes it can just be a smile or acknowledgement or something, a hi as you walk by. This woman, she was probably a grandma, and she's probably taking care of lots of kids, and she takes no prisoners, you know, that she's comfortable doing that. But sometimes I think today I had an experience walking with a person here in the neighborhood, and she has a brother who's reading all of this stuff, this anti-Jewish stuff, and all of the media is bad and nothing's the truth. And I said, you have to look at the difference between fact and attitude, and always seek the facts and base your knowledge on the facts. I didn't tell her what I felt in my heart. Her brother's nuts, you know, but I saw that here's somebody who's trying to make sense out of the world, and probably out of his fear, because he is a brown man, not a black man, but he's also not a white man. Out of his fear, he needs to create a demon. And if we look at it that way, we begin to relate to people especially during this critical political crisis in a different way. It's not easy. You don't go up to everybody and say what this woman did, but you can reach out in a way. The Venerable Master talks about compassion, and he says there are three kinds of compassion. There's spiritual compassion, you know, going to the temple or having your prayerful time at home, where you're very concentrated on a spiritual life. He said then there's the momentary compassion, where we go out and work at a food pantry or go on a walk for the Cancer Society or whatever. He said the hardest to do and the hardest to sustain is the silent compassion. That where your every thought, your every day is how can I help relieve the suffering of others? How can I take on that suffering so that I understand it, so that then I can meet that person's need? And I think that that's it. In some ways, what we do will come out of how we think. And how we think comes out of how we understand our oneness. So you find little ways. If I had time, because I wasn't sure of time, so I had an hour's worth here. You can look at the little things that you can do, even in your community, to bring some comfort to someone. And sometimes by bringing comfort to someone, that allows them to let go of some of their negative thoughts and behaviors. It sounds like magic, and maybe a little bit of it is.
Thank you so much for your talk today, Aina. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, we have run out of time. We're very grateful. And as you mentioned also, next month on September 25th, we will have the next TBIF. That information was included in today's email. If you're interested, please register. You can register at any time, even down to the very last day of the event. We will now have Venerable Miao Zhang do a final prayer, and then we will do a group picture. And just so you know as well, I'm sorry I didn't mention this, but our class today, our lecture today was recorded. However, we started a little bit late on the recording. So once it's available, we'll just be missing a little bit at the beginning. Thank you again for joining us, and I please have Venerable Miao Zhang continue in today's project.